Welcome everyone to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Monica. I am a tarot reader and astrologer based in Cairns, Australia. And today I'm doing a really fun video. I thought I would do a video response to Katey Flowers on my top 10 tarot decks. So yes, this was fun, but it was also a bit hair pulling because it's hard to really pick 10 tarot decks. But I got there in the end. So without further delay, I'm going to make a start. And I should say actually first that these are in no particular order because it would be impossible to really pick one above the others. So I'm going to start with the first, number one, is the Pagan Otherworlds. So I got this first edition. I was lucky enough to get this, and ever since I got it, it actually blew my mind when I opened it up and I saw the artwork and the cards. For me, I feel very deeply about this tarot deck, not just because of the artwork, which is stunning in itself. I love the colors that they've chosen. I love what the people are wearing. I love that it is infused with nature and elements of nature throughout. I love the cardstock. It is a really beautiful linen cardstock. It was the first deck that I obtained that has this particular cardstock. And also I love it because nature to me is, I guess it's a part of not just who I am, but who we really are. We are so connected to nature, whether we acknowledge that or not. And I actually remember in the last census in here in Australia, where you're asked to choose your religion, I looked through the options and they didn't have pagan, so I ticked other and I wrote down pagan. To me, it's just a label to describe my affinity and my love and my reverence for nature, for our Mother Earth. So the Pagan Otherworlds is certainly one of my top 10, and I think it will always be. Now, the next one is the Morgan Greer. All right, I have the Morgan Greer in a tin, and I mean, this is such an iconic tarot deck. I love this deck because it is based on the Waite Smith, as is the Pagan Otherworlds, which I forgot to mention. But I love it for obviously much more than that. The colors are absolutely vibrant, but they're not garish. This is a deck that was published, I believe, in 1979, and as you will see through the cards, there are mustaches galore. It's like, you know, you're taken back to that decade in the 70s, and I love that vibe about it. I love the energy that it brings. I love the way that people are depicted. I love the fact that it has no borders, and it is a really easy deck to use with clients. All right, it is based heavily on the Waite Smith. It follows the Waite Smith almost exclusively throughout the cards. There might be one or two that deviate a little bit, but basically it is one of my top workhorse decks when reading for the public. So I would always keep this in my top 10. In fact, I went for a reading for my birthday last year, and the tarot reader that I saw used the Morgan Greer. And you know, I came out at the end of the reading and I said, you know, I'm a reader myself, and mentioned the Morgan Greer, and he said that it was his third or his fourth version of the Morgan Greer that he has, and it certainly is a really workable deck. I would recommend this to beginners as well. I bought mine in a tin because I use it so much and I love having this in my handbag. I don't have to worry about the cards getting bent or you know, getting damaged, being thrown around in my handbag. So having it in a tin was a really good decision by US Games. The next tarot deck, and one that is such a treasure, is the Cosmic Cycles. So let me see if that will focus. I'll put some pictures up of the cards. This is a modern tarot deck it's illustrated by Miriam E.G. And when I first saw it online, I knew I had to get it. And then it arrived and I opened it and I looked through the cards and I played with it. and I fell in love with it, and I still do. It is one of my top tarot decks, absolutely. I say it's a modern deck because, as you see, a lot of the images represent scenes from our modern lives, for good or for bad. But I also love the artwork itself. I love the colors it is illustrated in, and I love the fact that it has no borders. Again, you know, I mean, I don't mind borders. I'm not, you know, too pedantic about borders if a deck has borders, but I do find sometimes that if they're too big, they're just a bit of a waste of space, in my opinion. So as I mentioned, this is a modern deck, and it's so refreshing to see, and I love that it doesn't shy away from some of the more difficult experiences of modern life. So on a positive note, you can see the Queen of Wands, where, you know, the woman is empowered and is able to fulfill her career dreams and work in her chosen career, and that's really wonderful to see. And I know many of my friends have done exceptionally well in their chosen careers, and you know, have reached levels that would have only been dreamt of 2 or 3 generations ago. But with that also come certain negatives, and you can see that in a card such as the 8 of Cups, where you can see the sadness in that card. Like, to me, it's palpable that there is a sadness. You know, if a woman chooses to also have a family alongside a career, or wishes to pursue both, that is a really difficult choice to make, unless you have an amazing supportive network to be there, people that you care and trust, such as your family. And even then, it is a difficult decision to entrust your kids to others and to not be there to bond with them. So I certainly appreciate this deck for tackling those issues and not shying away from it. And I highly recommend it as a tarot deck to work with and read for clients. It works like a dream. So that's one of the top 10. Next, I had to do it. I had to put a Marseille type deck, and here is the Noblet. This is the one created by Jean-Claude Flournoy. Hope I pronounced that right, and apologies if I haven't. Now, I chose this one. First of all, I had to choose a Marseille. I feel like Marseille is such a pivotal, crucial part of tarot history and tarot heritage that I had to have a Marseille deck in my top 10, you know. And if the house was on fire, yes, these are the top 10 decks that I would run in to rescue after my kids, maybe my husband. Kidding. So I chose this particular version of the Marseille because I love the colors. I love these particular shades or nuances of those primary colors. I think they work really well, and I love them. But I also love the fact that the cards are of a smaller size, and so I can work with them really easily. And of course, I love the cardstock that comes with this particular version of Jean Noblet. It is absolutely beautiful to shuffle and to work with. I find that when I work with a Marseille deck, I don't do big readings. I would never do like a Celtic cross. I find that's way too big for me. I tend to do smaller readings, like 3 cards, and I find that it works really, really, really well for that, for me personally. Okay, so that's another one in my top 10. So next is a tarot deck that is so dear to my heart, and that is Songs for the Journey Home. So I'm gonna have a sip here. I love this deck so much that I bought both versions of the deck. So it comes in a standard size, or the larger size, and a miniature size. And one day I will do a full review and in-depth commentary on this tarot deck, because I absolutely love this deck. Songs for the Journey Home is a creation of 2 New Zealand ladies, and their names are Catherine Cook and Dwariko von Somaruga, and I apologize if I have mispronounced that. It does come with a book, and I highly recommend you obtain this book if you Like what you see in the cards that I'm showing here, I highly recommend you obtain the book because it gives you a lot of insights into the creative process behind this deck, into the creators' lives and their vision and their art, and also it explains some of the imagery that you see in the cards themselves. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this tarot deck for beginners. Some of the cards have been renamed, particularly the court cards, and although the artwork is absolutely stunning in my opinion, I have an affinity and a love for hand-drawn decks. So for me, this deck was incredible when I first saw it. I still wouldn't recommend it for a beginner necessarily. Perhaps someone that's had a bit of an experience with the Rider-Waite system, certainly I'll recommend it then. It is really a really beautiful deck, and I would love to quote to you a little bit of a small passage from the introduction to the deck in the book. So the paragraph that I'm quoting goes like this. To sing the song of our journey is to embrace the opportunities for gaining greater sensitivity towards ourselves and others. Instead of creating hierarchies of experiences, labeling times of prayer and meditation as having greater value than other events we may label as mundane, we come to experience our life as an interwoven whole. Thus we feel an increasing sense of integration and consistency between our inner and outer life. Eventually, a song arises from the pool of silence at the very center of our being. This is our homecoming song. And I absolutely adore that. And I think that that essence in that paragraph is captured in the tarot deck. And I also love how it brings forth, it invites us to follow our own song, our authentic core of who we really are, and not that image that we create falsely out in the outer world. And some of the cards that I love about this deck, they bring about a connection to nature and to Mother Earth so beautifully. So for example, in the Knight of Pentacles, which is labeled Earth Creating, I love that vision of someone that's deeply connected to and enjoying the tactile, tangible pleasures of the world, the cups of tea, or even the overflowing bathtub, the comforts of a cozy home, and so on. And then in the Two of Pentacles, we have the idea of making choices, and sometimes those choices are between a simpler life, one that's more connected to nature, or a life out there in the busy city life. And I guess it resonates with me because I've had to make that choice personally, and it was really, really difficult to make, coming from a mainstream career point of view, where you have all the trappings of that, with a great income and so on and so forth, to trying to carve out an alternative way of living that is more aligned to who I really am. And another card I really love, for example, is the Justice card, and that shows the idea of balance, or rather imbalance. And that to me speaks volumes, because it's so reflective of the imbalance that we have in our world, where we have put progress and technology advances, and we've really worshipped the religion of progress over and above our connection to the natural world and the reverence to the natural world, which ultimately supports us all. So to me, this tarot deck is one that I absolutely adore, and I think it will always be a part of my top 10. Now, the next tarot deck I have is the Dark Goddess Tarot. Now, this is a deck that I know not a lot of people will resonate with, or perhaps not so much in terms of a workhorse type deck, but to me it is, at a personal level, I have worked with this deck often on a regular basis, and I love the way that the cards are illustrated. Of course, I was lucky enough to obtain the a version from the artist's website, so this is not the mainstream version that you see here. And to me, this is a deck I work with on a deeply personal level. As I mentioned, I also almost never read with it for the general public. It is a deck that requires courage on my part to face the darker aspects or any issues I may not wish to acknowledge. And equally because of this, it is a deck that is so rewarding. It is rich with tales from mythology, and therefore it has plenty of lessons to learn from. So that is the Dark Goddess Tarot. Next, I have another deck that is a personal deck to me. And I think I could actually refer to this deck as my soul deck. And that is the Haindl Tarot. Now, the Haindl Tarot was created by an artist by the name of Hermann Haindl. He's a German artist. And this is one of those rare exceptions in my collection. And it took me by surprise that I have had such a bond with this tarot deck, because it doesn't follow the Rider-Waite Smith tradition, and I'm a huge Rider-Waite Smith aficionado, for lack of a better word. It follows the Thoth tradition, and that's not one that I really have connected with for a lot of reasons. But it also has keywords on the cards, and that's like another big no-no for me. And so there's this really weird contrast with this tarot deck, in that it has all these elements that I would never go for on a tarot deck, and yet, as I mentioned, I would consider this to be my soul deck. There's something about it that I absolutely adore. So if you obtain this deck, and I have mine in a really nice bag I picked up, actually. I was in Zurich many years ago, and it's got some really interesting card backs. And it also comes, if you're able to obtain the two books written by Rachel Pollack, one on the major and one on the minor arcana. Highly recommend these books because it's not the easiest deck to understand and to work with. So looking at some of the cards, to me, the style of painting and the artwork shown here invokes ancient times and knowledge. When I read with this deck, I feel an eerie connection to a timeless energy, the cycles of time and earth, the magic of the earth, fire, air and water. I feel like it's a deeply grounding deck, yet one that at the same time transports me to times and ages far beyond the here and now. So I would never recommend this to a beginner. You know, if you're watching this, looking at top 10 tarot decks, looking to choose a tarot deck, even if you love what you see in the artwork, I would still recommend going with the Rider-Waite system. But I think this was one of the very early tarot decks that I purchased. I'm not sure if it was the second tarot deck. It could very well have been, and I wish I kept a record at the time of the order that I was obtaining my tarot decks. But I started doing readings with it, and I've used this deck in times that were really difficult for me, but also infused with magic, and so I guess that's why I have such a bond with it. Next I have a Baba Studio tarot deck, because yes, I do love Baba Studio, and I don't have the earlier decks, so I can't speak on the quality of those particular decks. I know they might not be as elaborate as some of their older decks, but certainly I absolutely love what they're putting out now in terms of quality. It is really right at the top of their game. So I had to choose one. I think realistically I could probably choose 3 or 4, but I went with the fantastic Menagerie. So I've got it right here with me. This is a, I even bought the bag, I had to do it. This is their second edition, which I bought. So that's the card backs for it, and it's the one that has, you know, the metallic overlay on the cards. And I bought this because I did have the first edition, which I still use and I love. And in fact, I actually prefer that one quite a bit more than the second edition. I'm not sure why. I just really like that particular cardstock, and I know that some people will call it flimsy, and yes, it is quite a bit thinner, but I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia, or I love their first edition of this deck. Both editions are really stunning, by the way. So the Fantastic Menagerie is a really, really good deck to work with for myself and for clients as well. It does amazing readings. It is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, and it follows that really well. The colors, the style of the artwork, it is based on the illustrator J.J. Granville, I believe his name was. So they've taken his illustrations and they have reworked them and have done a stunning job in creating this tarot deck based on that. So I really love some of the satire, or the the sense of humor that is shown in some of these cards. It's brilliant. And I do think that I'll be working with this tarot deck in particular for a long time in the future. And one day I might do a more detailed, in-depth review of it. So I highly recommend. I guess most of the Baba Studio tarot decks are of exceptional quality. If you like what you see here, they are releasing, I believe, the Bohemian Cats, if you're interested in that particular style in the future. But to me, the Fantastic Menagerie, it's one of the earlier decks, and I certainly adore working with it. The next deck that I have is the Gaian Tarot. So I bought the original edition, which was fairly expensive. I did a hashtag tarot collector video a while back, and one of the questions was, what is your most expensive tarot deck? And this was it. Even back a decade ago, I think this set me back around $250. And I have no regrets about it, because it is a really wonderful, wonderful tarot deck. So the Gaian Tarot, I have the full version. So this was the artist's own indie version that I bought off her website. This was created by Joanna Powell Colbert. And I absolutely love this tarot deck. I'm gonna try and see if I can get around the glare and show you some of the cards in it. It is an absolutely stunning deck. I love the theme of it, the energy of it, the essence of this tarot deck, and that is connecting us once again to Mother Earth, to living I guess in tune with her rhythms and her cycles and her elements. And no, this doesn't mean that we have to go back to the Dark Ages, but it does mean that we are conscious and aware about the choices that we make as consumers throughout our lives each and every day. Okay, and yes, that can be a bit exhausting sometimes, but it is so well worth it. You know, the products that we buy and the services that we use and the communities that we create and the relationships that we foster and nurture. I think that this tarot deck captures all of that absolutely beautifully. There was a card that when I saw it, like it was so dear to me, and I'll see if I can find it. Of course, it's probably one of the last cards in this deck. So here it is. It's the Three of Earth. Now, I'm not a practicing herbalist, but I have a huge affinity for herbs, making tinctures, making herbal oils, essences and things like that. And I loved, when I saw this card, I absolutely adored it. I love the energy of this card, because it's not just about working with herbs and plants. It's about getting together with your people, with your community, with the women or the men that are dear to you and that align with your energy and that are supportive of each other. And I love the joy that this card represents. There's just so much happiness and joy and contentment infused in that. And I think those that have experienced this, you know, that have truly understood the way of the simpler life, well, they'll know just how rich it is. It appears simple and maybe even poor in some ways, but so much richer in others. So anyhow, this is the Gaian Tarot, and that makes it firmly into my top 10. And of course, last but not least, it's got to be the Rider-Waite-Smith. So my Rider-Waite-Smith, the version that I work with is the Universal. I have it behind me. It's one of my, this is sort of like my special workhorse sort of shelf. And I have the Universal version in a lovely bag from Baba Studio. And yeah, first deck that I bought that started this journey. I love the Rider-Waite-Smith version. I think that it is, sorry, I love this Universal version because I love the colors, and I feel like it's stylistically just a lot nicer, a lot smoother than some of the original versions. They can be, to me, they seem a bit rough. So this was recolored by Mary Hanson Roberts, who has her own tarot, the Hanson Roberts Tarot. And I have used this deck so much. It probably needs a really good smudging, a really good cleansing, because I have used this at festivals when I've read, when I read for clients. It is my go-to tarot deck when I am not sure what tarot deck to use. When I'm not sure, you know, like when the energy is not quite right, sometimes I basically pick this tarot deck because it never fails. And I think because it carries so much energy over the good 14 years that I've had it, you know, it reflects that for me. That is a wonderful ally in my tarot collection. So yeah, that's it. That's my top 10. Possibly this will change in another few years as other decks become available, although quite a few of these decks I know will always be firmly in my top tarot decks for various reasons. And yes, there are more beautiful tarot decks out there, but I find that these tarot decks align with the core essence of tarot, align with a particular system and symbolism of tarot, and align with that heritage so well, and they do the tarot world justice. They really are infused with so much good energy and magic. So for me, that's my top 10. And I love seeing what other people are choosing for their top 10. It is just so fascinating. And I think all those that have uploaded their top 10, thank you to Katey Flowers for starting this whole thread. And once again, I thank you all for watching, and thank you for supporting my channel. Blessings.